So today I'm going to talk about potatoes, which might not seem extra exciting, but part of what I'm trying to accomplish is not only understanding the life cycle and the best way to raise and farm black soldier fly larvae, but also understanding the products that become available because of this process, because I'm using fly larvae as part of the composting process. What does it do to make better compost? Does it make better compost? And then what happens to the frass? How can I use that? How can it be best used in growing applications? Because that is what I really like to learn about a little bit more. So behind me over here, it's now planted in winter rye, but this growing season we did an experiment with potatoes, and so we started with 3 rows of potatoes, each with 33 potatoes per row, and I roughly guesstimated that was 7 to 8 pounds of potatoes per row. So a little backstory about this property in this field here in particular. There's a lot of clay here. There's a lot of clay. There's surprise springs here and there, so the drainage is a little iffy. It is on a hill, so if anything, the water will just run downhill, but there are some springs back here. So the thing about clay soil, not only is it terrible for drainage, it does have a lot of minerals in it. So part of the issue with that, though, is if there are a lot of minerals, that doesn't necessarily mean they are bioavailable to the plant roots. A plant, when placed in a clay-like or clay soil, doesn't necessarily have the ability to access those nutrients in mineral form. They're not equipped. However, there are microbes and organisms that can make it bioavailable. So if you add compost, if you add organic matter, you increase the drainage, and then you increase the likelihood that the soil food web will become more robust, and those nutrients that are otherwise locked up can be accessed by the plant roots and just become a healthier plant. So we did 3 rows. Now the top row, they ran from this point up here down. So 3 rows that ran down. Let's see, that would be east to west, we'll say. And the top row was azomite applied only. We had about 2 quarts of azomite applied to it, roughly. And azomite is just more trace minerals that might be lacking in the soil. Generally considered a soil amendment. And then the middle row and the lower row, I broke those into 3 sections. So the top portion of those 2 rows, I applied just compost. And then the middle portion, it was compost and frass combination. And this was at the time of planting. So potatoes were in the ground, put compost and frass on top. And then this lower third section, just frass. Same deal, frass in the trench, and then potatoes, and then covered. The bottom third row, like 8 or 10 weeks into the season, I did top dress with frass, and that row actually did the best out of the 3 rows. The middle row did pretty good. I mean, we had a lot of potatoes. We got a lot of potatoes. Out of 100 potatoes, we got a lot of potatoes. So no one was discouraged by the yield at all for any of the rows. But just some footnotes about the growing season. It was pretty rough. It was a cold spring. It was also windy. I think we had temperatures in the 30s even up into June at night. So we had a very chilly, windy, and dry spring. All those things considered, we ended up having a pretty good yield. So I will show you the numbers, the hard numbers that I wrote down, and so to better demonstrate this is what we started with and this is what we ended with. Overall though, I think the ticket and what I would really like to pursue more is the compost and frass initially, and then top dressing with frass at some point. The only thing that I'm not really sure of, like top dressing with the frass was very beneficial. Timing it was difficult because we had such a dry spell for so long and ended up with a wetter summer. Go figure. Timing the frass application, because that was just a top dressing and I did that on the north side of the planting because that's uphill, so otherwise it would run the wrong way and that wouldn't be beneficial. So timing the frass application to coincide with an upcoming rainfall was pretty important to do, and that was a little tricky. So yeah, that was the experiment that we did this past growing season. Would love to do more of that stuff because I like to do that stuff. I like to see growing results and how it can be better, how it can be modified, all types of stuff like that. So I have a chart with all this information written down in more concrete form versus me just talking about it. So stay tuned. Okay, so now you can see my rustic hand-drawn chart here. There. So April 10th, that's when these potatoes, which are called russet Burbank potatoes, went to the ground. Like I said, we started with 33 potatoes. It's about 7.5 pounds of potatoes. And so these pieces of lovely duct tape are my rows. So they're oriented the way they were planted up here on the hill. So the first row, 33 potatoes in, 2 pounds of azomite, 2 quarts of azomite applied to it. Like I said, trace minerals, that's all the azomite is. Then we had, like I said, the top third of both of these rows, compost. And what I did was 9 quarts of compost on the top 2/3 sections here. And then the bottom 2/3 of the section, I did 4 or 5 quarts of frass. And these were applied to the trenches. So where the potatoes went in, that's where that 9 quarts of compost and 5 quarts of frass went. And that was for both of these rows. So on June 13th then, that's when I top dressed with 16 quarts of frass. So quite a bit more than what I started with. But I just wanted to go whole hog, see what happens. And so here are the yield numbers. I have, on August 22nd we harvested We got 66.85 pounds of potatoes. We started with 7.5, so that's 8.9 times the yield, or what we started with. So then the middle row was just a little bit more, so 68.15 pounds. That's about 9 times what we started with. But then down here, the bottom, we got 74.9, so that's 10 times the yield. So I really think there's something to this. I really do. And this is the portion that I really want to explore more. I want to find out what is the best way to optimize both compost and frass, because I think if you composted them together, you might be missing something. I almost think it has to be kept separate, but that's just my gut feeling. I don't know if that's a logical gut feeling, but I feel like having one and the other and then kind of customizing that mix, I think there's something to that. And that might be the way to really dial in what your soil needs, what your crops need. Otherwise, if you did like a premix, this is a bag of compost and frass, like a 2-to-1 ratio. What does that mean? I don't know what that means. But I feel like this is a way to really dial in crop yield, soil health, adding to the soil versus applying a fertilizer or a pesticide that would take from it. I think this is the route of resilience. If you want to think about making your crops and your soil more resilient when it comes to drought or excess rain, having a robust soil health will make those plants in that soil more tolerant to those extreme conditions, which is a concern that we have now. So really focusing on what we can grow, not what we can kill. I think working within the harmony of nature, there's so much more potential and excitement there versus just killing everything and just micro focusing on monoculture. There's no life in monoculture. And also I think there's a growing research in understanding that our food takes in what the soil has, both good and bad. I think people are concerned about crops taking up Roundup, but I think we're finding that the crops that we're growing today, 50, 60, 70 years ago, they just don't have the nutrient density now, because our soil has been depleted. It's been over-farmed. It's been applied with too many chemicals, and that soil food web life is just not there anymore. And there might be minerals there, but there aren't the robust organisms and microbes to make them bioavailable to the plant roots, and therefore to the fruits, and then to you. Like we're all connected. We're all connected here. So how can we stay in harmony with all these systems versus detrimental existence? So that's what I want to pursue. That's what I would like to see done. And I'm thinking, what can we do next year? What can we learn next year? In what space? And bigger and better? I don't know. So that's where I'm at with that side of the whole bioconversion process. This was less of a how-to on black soldier fly larvae, but more of a how-to on a more general growing scale. So thank you for watching as always, and keep it circular.